let's maybe shift gears a little bit and talk about this shared ownership as we start to think about AI, sort of operationalizing and requiring both AI, both, IT and business collaboration. And how do we think about that? So as you can see here, we've got an interesting stat around AI powered, and let's maybe talk a little bit about, the AI innovation requires both IT and business. So, IT typically, right, they define the standards, the governance, the control. You've got the business that really wants that empowerment to kind of, drive the workflows, drive the connectivity between their systems and processes to make things more efficient. And they don't necessarily want to be reliant on the heavy workload that IT requires in terms of, back systems and working within that framework. So I think that's sort of the beauty of where, kind of democratizing AI and making that available for the business to be able to kind of drive that across their different applications. Isidro, maybe just where have you seen AI initiatives maybe kind of stall when we talk about ownership, right? When we talk about ownership wasn't clear, and when IT and business finally, have this shared model, what do you think kind of changes? So I'm curious in terms of the dichotomy between the business and IT. You could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, for sure. So I've seen the following pattern. It's very typical. IT owns the data pipelines, owns the processes, but no one takes the decision on what does the AI is supposed to improve. And therefore, IT delivers a model, operations questions the output, and no one uses it. Right. So that's a typical pattern that I've seen where AI initiatives kind of stall. Now with the fine line between information technologies and operation technologies, what I've seen with our companies that are being successful by implementing AI is that they come together as a group and they set the foundations for how does AI needs to work for their company. IT controls, right? Because you don't want any employee to kind of set a data breach just by putting information on the internet or into a model that is not very secure or it doesn't have the proper security controls. But therefore, when you have that type of control and you leave all of the operational perspective to the business, that's when AI starts to work properly for the companies.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. I think, when it comes to sort of operationalizing that, Ronen, I'm going to turn maybe over to you. I think that makes a ton of sense. If a business team comes to IT today with maybe a promise of an AI idea, what should that handoff ideally kind of look like in the first, 30 to 60 days?
Yeah. So look, I'm going to say a couple of things to this, and I see a very wide range of kind of practices in the market around this. I'll just maybe tell a little anecdote here. I was speaking at a conference in Boston last summer, and the session right before me was the CIO of this major corporation that stood up there and talked about how they've adopted AI across the board, and they've got their teams kind of, all implementing agents, and every employee had access to an agent building studio, and all this stuff was going out. And afterwards, when he was done speaking, I went up to him and I said, "Listen, this was fantastic. You're well ahead of the curve in terms of where you are operationally, but how do you handle governance? Like, what is the process for making sure that what's happening is in fact acceptable from a company's perspective on security, on privacy, on a range of other things?" And this gentleman looked me straight in the eye and said, "You know what? We haven't figured that out yet." Right. So that's really not a place that you want to be as an organization, right? I think there is this model of shared ownership. The business is closest to the needs. They understand what they're trying to accomplish. And over time, progressively so, it's going to become easier and easier for them to actually build those capabilities within their own teams, because the level of sophistication needed to do this is going down and will continue to go down. But IT's role here is in making sure that the organization as a whole is protected, that there's governance in place, that there's operational guidelines in place that are set to support that. And it's very common for the business folks to not think about that first. They have a business problem that they're trying to solve, and they might not be thinking as far as kind of what the other implications are. And so there's really, as Isidro pointed out, there needs to be a really close partnership between both teams in getting this right. Otherwise, it's really a recipe for bad things to happen.